Alô, alô. Alô, alô. E aí, pessoal, tranquilos? Voltando aqui, vou continuar a leitura. Na verdade, eu finalizei a leitura no último vídeo, né? Do Go and Kitty. Hoje é dia 1, hoje é dia 1, hoje é dia 27 do 1. E eu vou agora seguir aqui nesse Crow Island, que é outro texto do mesmo cara, o Easy Stories in English. Eu pretendo seguir essa playlist aqui, mas pelo site dele, pra eu poder ter acesso ao texto e lendo e tudo mais. Outra coisa também que eu fiz a correção do volume do áudio, pelo menos eu espero, ainda não testei. E é isso, bora lá. Vou começar aqui.
The awful crows circled
The also crows circle
overhead.
overhead.
At least they looked like crows when you
At least they look like crow when
first looked at them.
you first looked at them.
But when you stared at them for long enough,
But when you stare at them for long enough,
you started to see strange things,
you started to see stranger things,
unnatural things.
unnatural things.
Real birds
Real birds
don't stand in the same
stand in the same
position for such a long
position for such long
time without ever
without ever
moving.
moving.
And real birds don't run out
And real birds don't run out of
of batteries.
batteries.
The robot crows cried
The robot crows cried
unnaturally often,
unnaturally often,
and if their battery was dying,
and if the battery was dying,
the cry would come out hoarse,
the cry would come out hoarse,
like they had smoked
like they had smoked
a whole packet of cigarettes
a whole package of cigarettes
in one sitting.
in one sitting.
At first, I thought I could wait
At first, I thought, né,
for each of them to die out.
I could wait for each of them to die out.
I counted the hours,
I counted the hours,
and I celebrated each horse's
and I celebrated each horse's cry.
cry. But then, as time passed,
But then, as time passed,
I started to realize a problem with my plan.
I started to realize a problem with my plan.
The crows were being replaced.
The crows were being replaced.
They did it in the night,
They didn't in the night
and I couldn't see.
when I couldn't see.
The groups of birds never went below a
The group of birds never went below
certain number,
a certain number,
and those were the ones I could see.
and those were the ones could see.
I had no idea how many were hiding
I had no idea how many were hiding
in the trees all around us.
in the trees all around us.
So in the daytime, we had
So in the daytime,
to find a hiding place.
we had to find a hiding place.
Usually it was a cave.
Usually, it was a cave.
The robot birds couldn't
The robot birds couldn't go
go inside the caves for some reason.
inside the cave for some reason.
But when we moved further away from the
But when we moved further away from the facility,
facility, there were less caves.
there were less cave.
So we had to crawl into bushes,
So we had to crawl into the bushes,
cover ourselves with
cover ourselves with
leaves,
leaves,
or find a tree with no birds
or find a tree with no birds
in it and hope we were
in it, and hope we were
lucky. One time I had to crawl inside an
One time I had to crawl inside an old tree,
which was full of beetles.
which was full of beetles.
Those hours felt like
Those hours felt like
forever, feeling the beetles crawl up
feeling the beetles crawling up and down my skin,
and down my skin, across my lips,
across my lips,
even under my clothes.
even under my clothes.
Today we were under a bed of thick
Today we were under a bed of thick
red leaves,
red leaves,
with a tiny gap to
with a teeny gap to look
look through.
through.
The colours in the forests
The colors in the forest
were amazing.
were amazing.
I used to be the kind of person who loved nature
I used to be kind of person who loved naturally holidays.
holidays. I had hiked through the rainforest
I had hiked through the rainforests of Costa Rica,
taking photos of waterfalls and
taking photos of waterfalls and tropical birds and snakes.
tropical birds and snakes. Now I saw the scenery for what it was.
Now I saw the scenery for what it was: food,
Food, a hiding place,
A
or
hiding-
danger.
a hiding place, or danger.
I barely slept in the daytime.
I barely slept in the daytime.
When I did, I had
When I did, I had nightmares,
where I was hunted by
where I was hunted by men
men with crows' heads.
with crows' heads.
Then I would wake up and it would be night,
Then I would wake up and I would be night,
and we had to walk like zombies through the trees.
and we had to walk like zombies and drove trees. Nossa, eu sempre esqueço a pronúncia disso.
We was me and my
We was me and my dog,
dog, Fido.
Fido.
Thank goodness I had Fido.
Thank goodness I had Fido.
Without him,
Without him,
I would have gone mad a long
I would have gone mad a long time ago.
time ago. I found him soon after my
I found him soon after my
escape. I thought that one
I thought, não sei se assim se pronuncia isso, mas ok. That once I was out of the facility,
I was out of the facility, I would be safe.
I would be safe.
I didn't think that there would be
I didn't think that there would be
a whole island surrounding it,
whole island surround it,
full of humid forests
full of building forests
and all-seeing robots.
and all-seeing robots.
If I hadn't found Fido, I might have lost
If I hadn't found Fido,
my mind then and there.
I might have lost my mind then and there.
I reached over and scratched Fido behind his ear.
I reached over and scratched Fido behind his ear.
He wagged his tail, but not loud
He wagged his tail, but not loud enough
enough to draw the bird's attention.
to draw the bird's attention.
He was the smartest dog I'd ever
He was the smartest dog I'd ever met.
met. He stayed quiet all
He stayed quiet all
day, hiding in the grass with
hiding in the grass with me.
me. Without him,
Without him,
I wouldn't have been able to move.
I wouldn't have been able to move.
He could see in the dark, and
He couldn't see in the dark,
night was the only time the robots could
and night was the only time the robots couldn't see us.
see us. He guided me through the
He guided me through
forest and kept us away from
the forest and kept us away from the humans hunting me.
the humans hunting me. The crows ahead of us flew
The crows ahead of us flew away.
away. My heart jumped up to my throat.
My heart jumped up to my throat.
That was odd.
Eu não sei pronunciar muita coisa, viu?
That rarely happened.
That rarely happened.
I sat there still for
I sat there still for a long minute.
a long minute. Fido moved beside me.
Fido moved beside me.
It looked like the area
It looked like the area around us was clear.
around us was clear. Carefully, I got to my feet.
Careful, I got to my feet.
Fido wriggled out of the lead.
Fido, wriggle. Só por curiosidade, deixa eu jogar isso aqui em algum lugar que pronuncia. Isso aqui fala? Eu não tô escutando. Cidade então, bacana. E perdi. Aqui, Fido wriggled out of the leaves and shook them off him.
Leaves and shook them off him. He was such a good dog
He was such a good dog to
to lay silent and unmoving
lay silent and unmoving
for so long.
for so long.
I gave him another ear scratch,
I gave him another ear scratch,
and he wagged his tail again.
and he watched. Não vou nem pronunciar. His tail again.
He was a Labrador.
He was a Labrador.
I had always wanted a Labrador
I had always wanted a Labrador
back when my life was normal.
back when my life was normal.
I stretched my legs and we got moving.
I stretched my legs and we got moving.
It was still light, but I was
It was still light,
eager to take advantage of
but it was eager to take advantage of the opportunity we had.
the opportunity we had. Fido ran ahead,
Fido ran ahead,
clearing the way through thick trees.
clearing the way through the thick trees.
It was like a rainforest,
It was like a rainforest,
but not really.
but not really.
Real rainforests were so overgrown
Real rainforests were so overgrown
that you had to use a machete
that you had to use a machete
to cut through them.
to cut through them.
These ones only grew to a certain level.
These ones only grew to certain level. Vou tentar prestar um pouco mais de atenção no que eu tô escutando, porque tá dando uma abstraída legal aqui. Eu tô sentindo que eu não tô conseguindo replicar. Eu acho que eu tô fazendo essa técnica errada, porque eu tô prestando muita atenção no que tá escrito e não no que eu tô escutando. Acho que o ideal seria eu só escutar e falar, às vezes, sem acompanhar o texto. Mas ao mesmo tempo eu quero associar o som que eu tô escutando à palavra, pra eu começar a ler ela da forma correta. Mas é isso, né? Vamos descobrindo aí. E eu me perdi no texto outra vez, mas tá bom.
and then stopped.
And it was like it ran. Sorry, you use machete then. The ones only grow second level and then stop it.
Like a setting in a video game.
Like a setting in a video game.
Just thick enough to
Just thick enough
stop prisoners from
to stop prison from escaping.
escaping, but not so much that
But not so much.
they couldn't be easily found
They couldn't easily
by them.
be found by them.
Something moved in a
Something moved
nearby bush.
in nearby bush.
I stood still.
I stood still.
Fido stopped a
Fido stopped a few
few meters ahead of me.
meters ahead of me.
He made a face that said,
He made a face that said,
"What are you stopping for?"
"What are you stopping for?"
Maybe I had just imagined
Maybe I had just imagined
the sound.
the sound.
I started walking again,
I started walking again,
more urgently this time.
more eagerly this time.
Fido continued as well.
Fido continued as well.
Well, he never seemed scared.
He never seems scared.
A few minutes later, I
A few minutes later,
heard another sound.
I heard another sound.
Someone was pushing a branch away
Someone was pushing a branch away from
from their face.
the face.
I saw some red smoke to my left.
I saw some red smoke to my left.
They had found us.
They had found us.
I started running.
I started running.
I fell several times
I fell several times
because my legs were weak from lack of
because my legs were weak from lack of food.
food. Only fear pushed
Only fear pushed me
me forward. Fido moved quickly
Fido moved quickly
and easily.
and easily.
Maybe he had already known the danger.
Maybe he had already known the danger.
We pushed through trees and
We pushed through the trees,
cut through branches.
branches.
Then suddenly, Fido
Then suddenly, Fido stopped. Oh, porra, cliquei na propaganda. Ah, vou voltar lá longe no texto. Oh. Aí fica difícil não usar deblock. Olha o tamanho dessa div aqui, meu Deus. O que aconteceu? O trem tá todo torto. Perdi o progresso no texto.
before it found us was clear.
Bom, é isso aí então. Eu continuo de outra hora. Voltei. Then suddenly Fido stopped. I almost crashed into him.
Cut through branches. Then suddenly, Fido stopped. I almost crashed into him. Thankfully, I didn't.
Thankfully, I didn't.
There was a bright light, and
There was a bright light,
when my eyes had got used to it,
and when my eye had got used to it,
I saw that the forest had finished,
I saw that the forest had finished,
and we were standing before a steep
and we were standing before a step
cliff.
step cliff.
In the distance, the sun was setting over the sea.
In the distance, the sun was setting over the sea.
We had made it.
We had made it the edge of the island,
The edge of the island. But 100-meter
but 100-meter
drop lay between us
drop lay between us and the water.
and the water. I looked right
I looked right
and then left. I could hear the hunters
I couldn't hear the hunters crashing
through the trees behind me.
through the trees behind me.
There was no path down the cliff,
There was no path down the cliff.
only a few bits of rock sticking
Only a few bits of rock stick out.
out. Either I let myself be
Either I let myself be taken alive,
taken alive, or I died trying to escape.
or I died trying to escape.
The choice was clear.
The choice was clear.
Fido, reading my mind, started making
Fido, reading my mind, started making his way down the cliff.
his way down the cliff. I followed behind him.
I followed behind him.
It was so steep,
It was so steep,
and the only option was to jump between the
and the only option was to jump between the pieces of rock.
pieces of rock. After so much time running
After so much time running away from the hunters,
away from the hunters, I was weak, and when I landed,
I was weak, and when I landed,
all the bones shook in my
all the bones shook in my body.
body. It was easier for
It was easy for Fido,
Fido than me, but he was still struggling.
but he was still struggling.
He jumped onto a spike of
He jumped onto a spike of rock,
rock, and it looked like he was going to fall
and it looked like he was going to fall off.
off. But he threw his legs
But he threw his legs around just in time.
around it just in time. I threw a quick look behind
I threw a quick look behind
in me. There were two men stood on the edge
There were two men. There were two men stopped on the edge of the cliff,
of the cliff, guns in their hands.
guns in their hands. Guns in their hands.
They were shouting and pointing,
They were shouting and pointing,
but they didn't shoot.
but they didn't shoot.
I didn't know how long that would last,
I didn't know how long that would last.
though. I heard a loud cry.
I heard a loud cry.
I spun around.
I spun around.
Fido was falling down the spike of rock.
Fido was falling down the spike of rock.
He tried to hold it with his
He tried to hold it with his
paws and then fell off.
and then fell off.
He landed on the sharp rock
He landed on the sharp rocks
and bounced off,
and bounced off,
falling bam, bam, bam,
falling down,
all the way down to the
all the way down,
bottom of the cliff.
all the way down to the bottom of the cliff.
His body fell into a
His body fell
pile by the sea.
into the pile by the sea.
It was an awful shape.
It was an awful shape.
Fido! I cried.
Fido, I cried.
I jumped forward. I didn't care if I broke my neck.
I jumped forwards. I didn't care if I broke my neck.
I managed to catch myself
I managed to catch myself on the spike.
off on the spike of rock.
Of rock.
The skin came off my hands.
The skin came off my hands.
I stayed just long enough to regain
I stayed just long enough to regain my balance.
my balance, and then I jumped again.
And I jumped again.
A gunshot exploded behind me,
A gunshot exploded behind me,
breaking the spike of rock in two.
breaking the spike of rock in two.
I jumped from rock to rock, moving
I jumped from rock to rock, moving like
like a puppet.
But
Somehow,
somehow
I managed to get down to the water with
I management, to get down to the water
without killing myself. Fido turned his head towards me.
managing to get down to the water without killing myself. Fido turned his head down towards me.
Oh, Fido! I almost cried and hugged his head against my chest.
I almost cried and hugged his head against my chest.
It was hot,
It was hot, too hot.
too hot. I looked down at his body.
I looked down at his body.
One of his legs was broken,
One of his legs was broken,
but where there should have been
but where there should have been
blood and bone,
blood and bone,
there was metal and wire.
there was metal and wire.
Fido barked happily,
Fido barked happily,
but something was wrong with
but something was wrong with that bark.
that bark. It sounded
It sounded
hoarse,
hoarse,
unnatural.
unnatural.
I let go of him, crawling back on
I let go of him,
my hands and knees,
crawling back on my hands and
but it was too late.
but it was too late.
A second later, the robot exploded.
A second later, the robot exploded.
To be continued? I hope you enjoyed this.
Tá, essa leitura foi um pouco cansativa e eu confesso que eu não entendi muita coisa não. Entendi bem pouco do que foi aqui. Eu fiz mais pela pronúncia. E, assim, eu acho que não compensa tanto. Apesar de que eu tô sentindo já uma... Não dá pra sentir uma evolução no meu segundo dia fazendo, mas achei que foi um pouco mais natural do que no primeiro dia falar aqui. Mas eu vou ver se eu encontro algum outro site, alguém pronunciando textos menores, mais voltados para o nível B1, B2, A1, sabe? Bem limitado, talvez, a princípio. Mas só pra ir me familiarizando mais. Até porque... Eu não sei. Mas é isso aí. Obrigado pra quem assistiu. Tô um pouco cansado, mas é